What is up, people, and welcome to the first ELO discussion of the rank climb. For today, I'm going to be talking about bronze, the ELO that I just managed to climb out of. So, I've obviously been playing quite a few games in bronze for my series, and I feel like I got a good feeling for bronze, and I can talk quite a bit about it. So, I decided to divide it into a few subjects that I can, just randomly speak on. So, let's go on to my first chosen topic, which is champion choices. So, picking what champion you should be playing in bronze is something that you should probably think a little bit more extra about because right now League of Legends is actually in a good spot. You can pretty much play anything and it's probably gonna work. But the thing is, sometimes there are a few champions that require more teamwork or cooperation than others. And that can be bad because some players in bronze they just don't really pay attention to what's going on in the game, and they can cause you to almost feel like you have a wasted spell slot. If you saw my Twisted Fate game, my first gank, which is by the way like the most vital gank for Twisted Fate to succeed, in order to snowball, was completely wasted because when I went bot lane, I didn't get like follow up at all. Like the AD carry did not even realize that I was ulting bot lane, or maybe didn't even know what Twisted Fate's ultimate was. So I put myself in a 2v1 situation, and I even think I have to run away with my summoner spell. So I wasted my summoner spells, and I wasted the cooldown of my ultimate, and I let mid lane just keep pushing, and I was falling behind in experience and gold. So yeah. Um, Champions that rely on follow up, some form of cooperation from your teammates, probably not the best choice for bronze. And you can see this in champions such as Pantheon, Shen, Nocturne. There's probably a few more, and then there's also like champions that just have just abilities that require some form of cooperation as well, such as Kalista Ultimate or Thresh Lantern. I'm not saying these champions are always useless in bronze. I'm just saying that these champions actually are risky to play because the chances of people not following up is definitely there. Like it's always there no matter what elo, but in bronze, people just seem to be a little bit more oblivious to this than usual. So yeah, play those champions with care, and you can probably still climb out of certain elos just playing these champions over and over, but yeah, there's just a risk. That's all I'm trying to say here. Other than that, it's just very subjective. You can pretty much play any champion and you'll probably be able to climb out of bronze. As long as you can play well, you understand laning phase, you understand when the enemy laners are doing like mistakes that you can take advantage of. There's a lot of mistakes that you can think of that could happen, but the most clear-cut mistake that happened recently in one of my videos was in the set video where like Darius dealt damage to me, and he didn't realize that his passive, the bleed, was still ticking on me. So when he got closer to her range, he started eating a bunch of tower shots for no real reason, and that gave me an advantage in lane that I probably wouldn't have had if the Darius was more careful. And it's such things that will break and make lanes. So looking out for mistakes and taking advantage of those is really big. And that's why things like champion choices usually don't matter, because as long as people are going to be doing stupid things, you're probably going to still be able to destroy them if you understand your champion very well. So yeah, that's why things like Teemo will actually work in bronze. Okay, so let's see here. What else can I be talking about? Oh, champion choices. This also goes into champion select. So let's talk about bans. In bronze, people tend to ban usually the snowballing champions like Zed, Katarina, Fizz, Yasuo, even Blitzcrank a few times. Banning in bronze is really up to preference. You kind of want to ban out the champions that you aren't willing to play, but you know that there's someone in the enemy team that might play them, so that's who you should be banning. So let's say, for example, you're not a Katarina player, but you're absolute first pick. You could be picking it for someone in your team, but you don't know if someone's going to be able to play it well. So it's better to just ban Katarina in this case and just let nobody have it. So you kind of just want to ban the champions that can really turn a game around, and it's probably really easy to play. In higher elos, being easy to play doesn't matter because most people are usually very good at almost every champion. So you kind of have to be ready to just ban whatever a champion that you believe is the strongest. Bans have always been very subjective. There's no like set in stone fact like, oh, you must ban this one champion. Sometimes there's two champions like that that you really need to ban no matter what. But most of the times, it's there's really no pressure in banning specific champions. Just ban what you think is, the things that are causing you to lose games. That's what bans are basically there for. You want to ban whatever is going to give your team the highest chances of winning. So yeah, I believe I've spoken enough about champion choices. Let's move on to the next topic, which is going to be item purchases. So this is also another broad topic, but basically, people in bronze do tend to have very funny builds. Like there's also the funny term called bronze build. Like it's basically players who build duplicated items. They build like what, double Trinity Force or double Death Caps or like triple Phantom Dancers. Like basically overkill and wasted gold in a lot of ways. So you kind of want to not do that, but in bronze, I actually saw a lot of people do like the correct build paths, so it was actually pretty impressive. But there were quite a few that had like not so optimal builds. So then the question is, how do you find out what is the best item purchases to make? You can learn this by simply watching other players, high elo players, of course, or professional players that have their streams or have videos uploaded somewhere. And if they're playing your favorite champion, that's probably a time you should be paying attention, because some players are very willing to share like what they're thinking, like what's the thought behind buying this certain item. Because in League of Legends, builds aren't static. They have to be very dynamic. You have to build them according to what champions are being played in a certain game. For example, if there's 4 magic damage champions on the enemy team, you're most likely going to be taking a lot of magic damage. So if you're on like websites, your favorite guide website that tells you what items to build, tells you to always build Random's Omen second Jarvan, that's when you kind of have to make a change and have to build the mag resistant item. And because that will probably be more helpful to mitigate the damage that you'll be taking when you initiate on people. So yeah, like you have to be ready to be flexible with your item builds. They can't always be the same. This applies to every champion in the game. Almost. AD carries and mid laners tend to have very static builds. Like it doesn't really change no matter what you play against. But there are slight variations that you have to be paying attention to. And you can find out builds through a website, which I personally use a lot, which is called probuilds.net. And it's basically a website that keeps track of every pro player and their most recent games. And they you can just look at what items they got in which order. You can also even see like what runes they were using and what masteries. I use this website a lot because when I'm playing a champion I'm not very knowledgeable about yet, or don't barely have any experience with, this is the first website that I go to check out. And usually it's a very good template, and you can kind of just learn to see like, oh, these are the ideal items that I should be building on these champions. And then you can even see like when they're building specifically differently depending on what kind of enemy team they were facing, and you can kind of learn just from analyzing these different builds that they're doing. So yeah, probuilds.net, very good website. Use that if you're not going to be watching streams or other high elo players gameplays. And yeah, that's probably the most reliable website when it comes to building the best items on your champions. So yeah, I think I'm done talking about item purchases. Let's move on to objectives. Now, if you don't know what an objective in League of Legends is, we're talking towers, we're talking Baron, we're talking Dragon, we're talking blue buff and red buff. Keeping track of objectives is something that everybody in the game should do, not just like some people think it's just the job of the jungle and support, but everyone can keep track of this. And basically, whenever there's a team fight and it's done, you get an ace, your team gets an ace, and there's 4 people in your team alive, and the typical reaction in bronze is that everyone just goes to recall to heal up. But this is actually a waste, because while the enemy team is dead, you can be taking advantage of this by taking things from the enemy team that they normally would fight you for. So you can go for a dragon, you can go for taking their buffs, you can go for taking their towers. or he's going for Baron. It all depends on which is the closest and how healthy you guys are. If you guys can't take a beating, then obviously Baron is probably the least wisest choice. You should probably like focus down a tower, or if your team fight was close to a lane where a tower was still standing, go for the tower first and then go for the dragon. Obviously, there's a lot of small decisions that can be made when a team has been aced. But this is something that comes with time, and it's something that people in bronze don't really think too much about, and it's something that you most likely will have to lead the way and just like ping a lot. Because if you've seen my videos, I usually say dragon, 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 dragon. Like I really make myself clear like what I'm thinking at that time, and I just keep spamming the pings to like kind of make sure that my team can really see what I'm thinking. So leading the way to objectives when it makes sense is a very important thing to do. Like a small form of leadership, basically. And because objectives really do win games. Like the less towers there are in the game, the closer you are to the Nexus. When you're at the Nexus, you can end the game. And if you get the dragon buffs, if you get all the way to 5 dragon buffs, then you're gonna be really strong along with your team. Or if you get Baron buff, you're gonna have crazy amount of minions just like pushing and being really tanky, and it just makes taking towers even easier. An objective that leads to you is taking objectives. So that's just how the game works, and it's just something that not a lot of people pay attention to in bronze. Okay, so I feel like I've talked enough about objectives. Let's move on to the next one. Map awareness. Okay, so when you think about map awareness, people think, oh, bronze map awareness, holy crap, must be bad. Yeah, map awareness is pretty bad in bronze. People don't seem to pay too much attention to the map. They look more into like what's currently happening on their view of the champion. So you kind of have to be other people's map awareness sometimes. I actually do this quite a lot. I always try to be, the map awareness for my team. I try to always look around the map, and if I see a lane is gonna get ganked, I try to tell them, like ping them, hey, you gotta go back, like do the back pings tons of times on top of them, so that they know that they're the ones being, alerted. And I've saved plenty of times people who didn't realize that we were gonna get ganked by just pinging them back, and sometimes they'll even question me like, why are you pinging me like crazy? And then I'll tell you were about to get ganked, dude. Didn't you see on your own ward? And yeah, that's just one way to fix poor map awareness in bronze. You just have awareness for them. And now you're gonna think, why do I have to do double work? Why can't I just have map awareness for around myself? Well, in general, it's always good to know what's happening around the entire map, because if you can keep track of where the jungler is, then you can also predict when he's going to be next, if he's going to go for your lane next, and it just makes everything that much easier to play. And if it means that you have to ping more just to save your team from deaths, it's always going to be worth it, because that just means that the game will be less harder the longer it goes. And it's just a good thing to practice. Map awareness, very important, something that a lot of players lack in this elo. But it does get better the higher elo you go, so it's not something you should always do, but it's definitely something good to have, a really good map awareness. Okay, so my next point is going to be attitude. Attitude is something that's a little bit controversial in League, because people always talk about, oh, having a positive attitude is the best thing, because you motivate your team to do better, you will not piss off your teammates and make them play worse. And then there's the high elo players who are really toxic to each other, who's really they're just not nice people at all. And this gives very mixed, it gives very mixed vibes, because some people look at high elo players and they're like, wow, they're really nasty and they're high elo. So they're starting to see a correlation or a connection between being high elo and being a douchebag. So they think holy crap, I need to be a douchebag in order to win my games. So people seem to just adopt the douchebag personality, because there's actually people who are nice and then they play League and they turn into douchebags. And I feel like this is so wrong, okay? Because most of those douchebags, they usually are very quiet when they're playing their solo queue games, and they only explode when they know the game is actually over. Now, players who aren't that great yet, they tend to explode as soon as a small mistake happens, and then it breaks out into a flame war, and it's really bad. So basically what I'm saying is, if you're going to have an attitude in this game, it should not be to flame people. I think that enough is obvious. I never flame people. I'll joke around a little bit. I'll talk in all chat, or I'll talk to my own team, crack some jokes. That's just me. And yeah, I don't really like I don't behave rudely because it's just not me. But it's also because it's not good because you make your team talk, and when you're making your own team talk, they're not spending time playing the game. When you're typing, you cannot be making commands to your champion. So that's kind of like crowd controlling your own team if you're making them speak. So like, if you're gonna have an attitude, you just have it to not give a damn. Because if you've seen in most of my ranked games, that I've been playing, I usually don't say a lot in chat. Like I actually say almost nothing. I will only call out when like summoner spells are being wasted from laners. Like, oh, this is a good thing to keep track of because the jungler can then come and gank because he knows, oh, mid lane's flash is missing. Okay, I can come mid then, and pull off a good gank. So yeah, attitude. Just don't care what other people think. Play your own game. Try your best to win every time. If you want to let go, do it once the game is over, in after game chat, not during the game. During the game, it's probably going to be very bad for your game. So, just ignore people. If you really have to, like, do the slash ignore all thing. I don't do that because I personally like to see what everyone has to say. Even if it's bad, it can be useful to see. And yeah, it just gives. If you don't like someone, just report them. Don't talk to them. Just report them. That's all you have to do. Problem solved. After game is done. You can do whatever you want. But if you really want to climb, if you really want to win, these bronze players, they probably don't know very well how the game works. So just don't pay attention to them. Just pretend you're like a child that is still learning. Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it. Okay, so that's attitude. Let's move on to communication. Okay, so this is kind of already clashing with the attitude thing where I said like don't try to talk with your team. Only talk about things that make sense, such as like calling out the summoner spells being down, or that you're planning to do Baron if your next team fight is successful or something like that, or like you're gonna tell your team I'm gonna split push. Can you please everyone go top and do this while I go like to bot lane? And keep communication to a minimum. That's why I put it in brackets. Like it's to the other points, like communication is in brackets because communication in solo queue is really not necessary. In premates, communication, like a lot of communication, is really useful because everybody knows each other. They know how to play, and knowing all the information is really useful. In solo queue, communication should almost always be kept to a minimum, just down to summoner spell cooldowns in chat to just pinging a lot. Like that's the only communication you need. Pings. Like pings are so useful in this game. Like holy, like it's just so good. Like just keep it to pings and just calling cooldowns. If you want to make friends, you're free to do so. But if you want to win, don't spend your time talking about how your day was in chat while you're laning. Like that's just gonna make you miss CS and stuff. So yeah, if you're gonna talk, do it after the game's over. I always said. Okay, so that's communication done talked about. So my last point is going to be lack of experience. Okay, this is probably the most obvious point about bronze, and it's just everybody lacks experience in here. Some people may have like a lot of games in bronze, but they still aren't really learning the game properly because they're playing against players who also don't know the game. So they just don't know the right knowledge, and people think that they really know how the game works, and they're convinced, and they think oh I'm always doing the right thing, and that's why I always feel like I'm winning. But then until I see my teammates play with me, we start losing. Like why is that? Why does that always happen to me? And bronze is like the lowest elo possible. So if you're finding yourself constantly winning, losing, winning, losing, winning, losing, like you're not going upwards, it's always like up and down, up and down. You're most likely in the elo you belong to, and all you can do is play the game more and try to understand the game and all of its different champions better, because when you reach that point where you can't really win constantly, it means that you probably are the most common problem among all your games. Because one thing is to be very unlucky and have like a disconnect in your team, or have like someone who is force feeding because he got mad. Like just take those games as a sign that that's just luck. That is the actual luck about League of Legends, when you get a random person who's not trying to win. Other games there weren't really any problems like that, you should always look at yourself as the actual problem to why the game wasn't won. In fact, you should always think that you are the problem when you lose a game, because you can if you focus on other people and their mistakes, you're not like looking to improve. You're just looking to find a reason to feel good about yourself, because you're like, oh, I don't belong in bronze, but I play like 500 games and I'm still here, but I still don't think I'm the problem. Like you're probably the problem if you're stuck in bronze for so long. So yeah, uh, you have to have the good kind of experience, not the bad one where you always think that other people are the problem, not you. If you really are that good at the game, you should be able to make an impact that will be able to always move towards a positive direction rather than a negative one or an inconsistent one. So yeah, just play the game more basically, and try to look at your own mistakes rather than at others. And yeah, that's really all I had to say about that. That was my last point. And I hope this video may have been useful to some of you guys who may be in bronze right now. Obviously, I'll make another discussion for an elo when I jump or get promoted from the next elo. And yeah, that's for then. For now, I'm done with bronze. Thank you guys for watching this video. Obviously, this wasn't gameplay, so if you're hoping for a gameplay, I'm very sorry. But yeah, I felt like I had to share this with you guys. And if you, of course, still have questions about bronze, what you think, what I may think about bronze, you can always ask so in the comment section, and I will try my best to answer your questions. Other than that, I've been speaking for about 20 minutes now. It's been quite exhausting. So thank you all for listening, and hopefully I'll see you guys for the next game. This has been me, SteveRoxorz.